In the kingdom of Arya, the king and his knights rode through the hills in pursuit of a dragon. They followed the beast's trail into a cave, where the group witnessed a sight that left them stunned. At that moment, the dragon flew in and breathed fire, incinerating most of the knights in a single blast. Then, it used its tail to catch the remaining knights, killing them one by one. Finally, the dragon approached the king, who knelt and awaited his fate. Many centuries later, in a northern land, two sisters, Floria and Elodie, were chopping whatever they could find. They were the daughters of the local lord, doing their best to help their people. The people were suffering from poverty and the harsh cold, as winter ravaged the land. Day by day, more and more people left, causing them to worry that their village might not survive much longer. Suddenly, a carriage appeared, which was strange as they rarely had visitors. The two sisters hurried back home to meet their father, Lord 𝕯𝖒𝖘𝖑, and their stepmother, Lady 𝕯𝖑𝖑𝖑, who were speaking with a nun, who said that Elodie would succeed. Lord 𝕯𝖑𝖑𝖑 revealed that the royal family of Arya wanted Elodie to marry their prince. At first, Elodie refused, but 𝕯𝖑𝖑𝖑 changed her mind when he pointed out that if she agreed, their village would receive enough money to save their people for many years to come. Sometime later, their family set out for Arya. As they neared the land, their ship sailed into a thick fog, and the group was frightened by strange shapes in the darkness. However, it turned out to be just two gigantic dragon statues. After docking, the 𝕯𝖑𝖑 family was astonished by the prosperity of the land and the grandeur of the castle. The servants led them to their private rooms and informed them they would meet the royal family the following day. Elodie went out onto the balcony to admire the view. She noticed a girl of her age standing on the opposite balcony, who was soon pulled away by a servant. That night, Elodie couldn't sleep, so she found a way to pass the time by drawing. Then, she went out onto the balcony to get some fresh air and noticed that the light in the other girl's room was off. She was also surprised to see torches burning in the distance, meaning someone was heading up the mountain in the middle of the night. The next day, Elodie's family met with the royal family. Queen Isabel asked Elodie to spend time with Prince Henry before the wedding. After an awkward start, Elodie and Henry began to converse comfortably and had an interesting discussion. After Henry praised Elodie's drawing skills in her letter, she curiously asked about the ritual she had witnessed the night before. Henry explained that it was one of 3 ancient ceremonies to honor their ancestors, which is why the wedding took place on the same day. Meanwhile, in the castle, Lord 𝕯𝖑𝖑𝖑 finished his discussion with Isabel about the agreement and looked very uncomfortable. Lady 𝕯𝖑𝖑 tried to check on him, but he snapped and insisted that nothing was wrong. Then, Lady 𝕯𝖑𝖑𝖑 tried to talk to Isabel, but the queen was displeased when Lady 𝕯𝖑𝖑𝖑 explained that the families should be united and harmonious. Isabel replied that this was just a necessary transaction. She needed a princess from the land of 𝕯𝖑𝖑𝖑 and they needed money. She also reminded 𝕯𝖑𝖑𝖑 that she was the daughter of a rope maker, so she shouldn't forget her place. Lady 𝕯𝖑𝖑𝖑 noticed Isabel mispronouncing Elodie's name and tried to correct her, but Isabel didn't care and walked away. In the evening, Lady 𝕯𝖑𝖑𝖑 anxiously went to see Elodie to say that something suspicious was going on. So she thought the wedding should be cancelled. However, before they could discuss it further, Lord 𝕯𝖑𝖑𝖑 appeared and ordered everyone to go to bed. The next morning, the servants helped Elodie prepare for the wedding. She was given a beautiful dress, including a blunt knife and a perfume spray bottle. The wedding went smoothly. Henry and Elodie exchanged rings, kissed, and Elodie was crowned. Afterward, Elodie said goodbye to her family and climbed into the carriage with Henry. He explained that they would participate in an ancient ritual on the mountain. They ascended a stone staircase, and Elodie was stunned to see many people wearing strange golden masks, not to mention that Isabel was dressed like a nun. The queen handed Elodie a coin and told her that she would help protect the kingdom. Then, they entered inside, where Isabel began telling the story of when their ancestors arrived on this island and discovered a dragon living there. The dragon, the last of its kind, attacked the village as soon as it saw humans settling. The king gathered his soldiers and tried to fight the monster. However, the dragon killed everyone, leaving only the king, who had to sacrifice his 3 daughters to allow the island to be shared. As she listened to the story, Elodie noticed everyone was looking at her strangely. And she felt scared as they crossed a dangerous bridge over a chasm. Isabel continued explaining the king's sacrifice, which they celebrated every generation. Then, Isabel cut the hands of Henry and Elodie, pressed their hands together to mingle their blood and covered them with a cloth. Isabel declared that Elodie was now officially of royal blood. Finally, Elodie threw the coin into the chasm, thinking that the ritual was over. Henry carried Elodie across the bridge, but suddenly he apologized and threw her into the chasm, causing her to scream as she fell. Elodie collided with some branches before falling into a puddle of mud and losing consciousness. She woke up moments later, her body covered in bruises, but she still stood up and began shouting for help. However, no one remained on the bridge. Her cries awakened the dragon, which had been hiding deep in the cave. Elodie cried, her despair turning into fury, and she tore off the precious jewelry before trying to climb out of the chasm. Unfortunately, she fell again and was injured once more. At that moment, she saw other jewelry that did not belong to her and realized that the royal family had been sacrificing girls to the dragon for many years. Suddenly, she heard a noise and turned around to see a light coming from the cave. She went inside and discovered a bird on fire. 𝕯𝖒𝖘𝖊𝑑 immediately used the earth to put out the flames, but it was too late. The bird was dead. Unexpectedly, a roar echoed from deep within the cave, and hundreds of flaming birds flew out. They circled around 𝕯𝖒𝖘𝖊𝑑 for a few minutes before falling to the ground, dead, their bodies forming a glowing lantern around her. 𝕯𝖒𝖊𝑑 was terrified when she heard the dragon's roar. She turned around, and it was right behind her. She ran and hid behind a stalagmite. As the dragon began to speak, it said that every royal generation must pay the price, and it could smell it in 𝕯𝖊𝑑's blood. Looking at the scars on her body, 𝕯𝖊𝑑 realized that the ritual had been performed to deceive the dragon. The dragon told 𝕯𝖊𝑑 to run, and she obeyed, screaming as she sprinted through a tunnel, just in time to avoid the fire the dragon breathed. The fire blocked all exits from the tunnel, but 𝕯𝖊𝑑 managed to find a safe spot. There, she discovered a charred body and realized it was the girl she had seen on the balcony. When 𝕯𝖊𝑑 heard the dragon approaching, she tried to escape through a small hole, but her dress got caught. 𝕯𝖊𝑑 decided to remove the padding from her skirt and ran away, hiding in a smaller cave. However, a bit of fire still caught her foot, burning her and causing her to scream in pain. The dragon heard her scream but couldn't reach her because of its massive body. When the dragon left, 𝕯𝖊𝑑 remembered the dull knife and scraped it against a stone to cut a part of her dress. The pain in her foot was unbearable, but she pushed through and used the torn fabric to bandage the wound. She then opened the spray bottle and caught a bit of fire inside, using it as a lantern. Now, she was able to explore the cave and eventually discovered a very narrow tunnel. She began to crawl through, but her dress got stuck. She pulled hard until she broke free and slid down. She tried to grab onto the wall, but her hands had no strength left and she fell below. The flame in the spray bottle went out, but 𝕯𝖊𝑑 refused to give up. She stood up, clinging to the rock face to keep going, determined to head toward the light she saw in the distance. After a painful journey, she exited the tunnel, only to almost fall off a cliff. She could still see the light on the other side. She removed her wedding ring and threw it into the abyss. 𝕯𝑑 stepped back and then ran with all her might to make a big leap. The other side of the cliff was slippery, and she couldn't hold on, but it quickly snapped, and she promptly drew her knife, stabbing it into the rock to steady herself. Then, 𝕯𝑑 used the knife to climb the rest of the cliff and discovered that the light came from cute, glowing snails. After checking and ensuring they wouldn't bite, 𝕯𝑑 tore off part of her puffy sleeve, placed the snails inside, and created a new lantern. She continued walking for a while and found a small lake. However, when she tried to drink the water, she immediately spit it out because the taste was unbearable. However, there were icicles dripping from the ceiling. So 𝕯𝑑 stood beneath them to catch the drops. Suddenly, the ice began to melt faster and the light shining through had a red tint. 𝕯𝑑 opened her eyes and discovered that the dragon was breaking through the ice with its fire. The dragon landed and continued to chase after her. 𝕯𝑑 quickly entered a small tunnel that the massive creature couldn't fit into. Inside the tunnel, 𝕯𝑑 found a message on the wall that read, "Safe here, cannot get close," signed with the letter V. Looking around, she noticed the dresses of many girls. On another wall, the names of the girls were added over the years, including the letter V, belonging to a girl named Victoria. 𝕯𝑑 took a moment to remember them before removing the bandage from her injured leg, but the wound showed no signs of improvement. She then tried to nap while holding the lantern. Suddenly, 𝕯𝑑 began to see the ghosts of the girls who had been sacrificed before her, suffering in pain, fear and betrayal. Victoria was adding her name to the wall but suddenly turned around and told 𝕯𝑑 that it was all a lie. At that moment, 𝕯𝑑 woke up and discovered snails crawling on her leg wound. She panicked and began to remove them but then realized that their slime had healing properties. Her leg wound had healed. She placed a snail on the other large wound and apologized for underestimating them. 𝕯𝑑 found a map on the wall, which meant that at least one girl had escaped from this place. The map indicated that she would encounter 3 tunnels and had to choose the middle one, where crystals and sounds would lead to the exit. 𝕯𝑑 then tore off the inconvenient parts of her dress, wrote her name on the wall, and chose the middle path. Eventually, she heard a small melody and continued walking until she found a wall full of crystals. This was the source of the noise, and they also glowed under the sunlight as they were right beneath the exit. Nearby, she saw a crown with the letter V on it, meaning Victoria had escaped from this place. Since the crystals were very sharp, 𝕯𝑑 tore off another part of her dress to protect her hands and legs, then used the crown to start climbing. Little did she know, the dragon was watching her. 𝕯𝑑 tried to climb, but a crystal shattered under her hand, causing her to fall. However, she managed to use the crown to grab onto a crack in the stone at the last moment. Then, 𝕯𝑑 heard the dragon's roar nearby, and she hurriedly climbed up and finally reached the exit. She ran quickly to the exit and found herself standing at the edge of a very deep pit, on a high cliff. Desperate, she collapsed and cried. Suddenly, the sound of horses' hooves echoed, and 𝕯𝖒𝖘 realized a group of knights was approaching the mountain. She tried to scream for help, but just then the dragon flew over and covered the mouth of the pit. 𝕯𝖒𝖘 stepped back just in time and saw the words, "Not safe," signed by V. Nearby was a corpse. Victoria had died there and couldn't escape. The dragon was about to breathe fire but stopped when it heard someone calling 𝕯𝖒𝖘's name. The dragon left to investigate, and 𝕯𝖒𝖘 narrowly escaped death. It was 𝕯𝖒𝖘 and 3 knights. They descended into the cave using a rope and began searching for 𝕯𝖒𝖘. 𝕯𝖒𝖘 used the sound of their voices to find her way back. As she entered a new tunnel, 𝕯𝖒𝖘 was shocked to discover a nest containing 3 dead dragon hatchlings. She recalled Victoria's words, which helped her realize that Isabel had lied. A flashback appeared, revealing that the dragon was not the last remaining one and that the king had entered the cave solely to kill all the dragon hatchlings. Thus, the dragon's attack was an act of revenge. It killed all the knights as seen in the beginning, but when it came to the king, the dragon said that death would be too easy, and he should suffer as it had suffered. Since then, the royal family had provided the dragon with 3 women each generation, mixing their blood to make them resemble royal daughters. Afterward, 𝕯𝖒𝖘 found her father and his men, but she remained hidden for safety. At that moment, the dragon appeared and grabbed a knight, flying into the air before dropping him from a great height. The knight collided with the rocks and fell to the ground, dying instantly. While the other one tried to escape, the dragon grabbed the second knight and crushed him under its claws before interrogating 𝕯𝖒𝖘. The dragon asked 𝕯𝖒𝖑 why he was there. He explained that he had come to rescue his daughter. He attempted to attack with his sword, but the dragon caught him with its tail and disarmed him. The dragon then threw him to the ground. At that moment, 𝕯𝖒𝖘 moved stealthily, waiting for the right opportunity. The dragon demanded 𝕯𝖒𝖑 call out for his daughter. 𝕯𝖒𝖑 decided to give a heartfelt speech of regret, admitting that he had made a terrible mistake, then shouted for 𝕯𝖒𝖘 not to come out. Immediately, the dragon slammed him to the ground and drove its claw into his heart. 𝕯𝖒𝖘 could not stop sobbing as she cried, and the dragon began to search for her. At that moment, the guide made a noise, causing the dragon to think it was 𝕯𝖒𝖘 and chase after him. As the dragon flew off, 𝕯𝖒𝖘 said her final goodbye to her father, kissing his forehead before he passed away. Afterward, she used the rope her father had left behind to begin climbing out of the cave. Meanwhile, the dragon found the guide and crushed him to death before continuing its pursuit of 𝕯𝖒𝖘. However, 𝕯𝖒𝖘 climbed quickly enough to avoid the flames that engulfed the exit. She immediately mounted her father's horse but only rode for a short distance before jumping off to hide behind some rocks, while the horse continued running. The dragon was deceived and kept chasing the horse, setting it alight. The dragon continued to breathe fire into the clouds, creating a terrible storm, a sign that the pact had been broken. At the castle, Isabel realized what had happened and immediately sent knights to kidnap Floria. Lady 𝕯𝖒𝖑 tried to stop them but was stabbed in the process. As soon as the fire subsided, 𝕯𝖒𝖘 emerged from her hiding place and unexpectedly encountered Lady 𝕯𝖑𝖑, who had arrived on horseback despite bleeding. When 𝕯𝖒𝖘 heard what had occurred, she promised to save her sister and reclaim the horse to return to the mountain. Meanwhile, Floria was taken to the bridge. However, Henry refused to perform the ritual with a child. Isabel ignored him and used her own blood as a replacement, cutting Floria's hand to mix the blood, then throwing her into the deep pit. When 𝕯𝖒𝖘 reached the bridge, everyone had already left, and Floria had been captured by the dragon and taken into the cave. However, the dragon didn't kill her right away but wanted to lure 𝕯𝖒𝖘 to save her sister. In desperation, 𝕯𝖒𝖘 used the rope to return to the cave and relied on her previous experience to move faster. After checking the map to find the dragon's lair, 𝕯𝖒𝖘 equipped herself with her father's sword and prepared a trap for the dragon. The trap consisted of armor and rope, burning under a small flame. 𝕯𝖒𝖘 left, and when the rope burned out, the armor fell, causing the dragon to fly out of the lair to investigate the noise. This allowed 𝕯𝖒𝖘 to sneak into the lair and wake up Floria, although she moved slowly due to her injured leg. At that moment, the dragon discovered the trap and returned to the lair. Floria hid while 𝕯𝖒𝖘 stood waiting with her sword ready. She tried to explain that they had been deceived by the queen, but the dragon didn't believe her and prepared to breathe fire. 𝕯𝖒𝖘 stabbed her sword into the dragon's mouth, but it breathed fire at her, causing her to fall into the lake. While the dragon was pulling the sword out of its mouth, 𝕯𝖒𝖘 quickly swam to the shore. At that moment, Floria threw another sword to her. Suddenly, the dragon jumped up and held 𝕯𝖒𝖘, stabbing her with its claws. Before it could kill her, 𝕯𝖒𝖘 pulled out a knife and stabbed the dragon in the eye, causing it to throw her far away. Next, 𝕯𝖒𝖘 grabbed the sword again and charged at the dragon, which struggled with only one eye. She successfully stabbed the sword into its chest. The dragon grabbed her again, and 𝕯𝖒𝖘 continued to stab its claws, causing the dragon to release her once more. As the dragon moved closer, 𝕯𝖒𝖘 noticed dust rising from a curved stalactite, and an idea flashed in her mind. She stood in front of the stalactite, and challenged the dragon to breathe fire at her. Just as the dragon breathed fire, Elodie dodged at the last moment. The flames backfired, burning the dragon's body and defeating it. Elodie then showed the dragon the scar on her hand, proving that it had killed innocent girls, not royalty. The dragon asked her to end its life, but Elodie put down her sword and refused to continue the cycle of hatred. Instead, she took a handful of snails and placed them on the dragon's body, helping it to heal. Meanwhile, at the castle, another wedding was taking place to deceive the third girl of this generation. Suddenly, a coin rolled towards her, and Elodie stepped in, accusing the royal figures. Then, Elodie told the bride as well as the people that they could escape. They trusted her and quickly left. At that moment, the dragon appeared, breathing fire that consumed everyone present, killing Isabel and all the royal family, ending it all. While everyone panicked, Henry closed his eyes and accepted his punishment, knowing he deserved it. The castle collapsed, but Elodie walked on with her head held high. A few days later, Elodie, Floria, and Lady Bayford had recovered and were preparing to leave on a ship full of gold, silver and provisions for the people. They decided to rule their land together, and Elodie began calling Bayford mother, instead of stepmother, throughout the journey home. The dragon flew nearby, sharing a nod of mutual respect with Elodie. We have just finished the summary of the movie Damsel. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications so you won't miss interesting videos like this. Thank you for watching.